There is a quiet power in the present moment, one so deep and untamed that most men spend their entire lives avoiding it. They chase success, women, status, and control. They drown in plans, regrets, and distractions. But beneath all this noise, Alan Watts whispered a truth that still shakes the soul of every man willing to hear it. You are not a machine meant to conquer time. You are life itself, unfolding now. In a world that worships productivity and fears stillness, embracing the present moment is an act of rebellion. It's the warrior's return to the source. The man who learns to be fully here, right now, unlocks a kind of strength that cannot be bought or taught. He becomes unshakable because he no longer clings to the past or fears the future. Alan Watts didn't give men answers. He offered something far more dangerous, a mirror. And if you dare to look into it, you might just find the man you were always meant to be. Part 1. Time is an illusion. Escaping the mental trap. Alan Watts once said, "The future is a concept. It doesn't exist. There is no such thing as tomorrow." And yet, most men live in the illusion that their real lives will begin later. After the next job promotion, after the next relationship, after they finally get their act together. This psychological trap has enslaved millions of men, convincing them to suffer through the present like it's some inconvenient waiting room for a better future. But here's the raw truth. The future is a fantasy. The past is a ghost. The only thing that truly exists, the only place you have ever lived, is now. Everything else is just mental noise. Watts didn't just say this to sound poetic. He meant it as a call to liberation, because as long as a man believes his peace lies somewhere ahead, he becomes a prisoner of his own mind. He becomes anxious, restless, always striving, but never arriving. He becomes disconnected from his instincts, his power, his breath. A man who doesn't understand the illusion of time becomes weak, not in his muscles but in his presence. He might look successful, but inside, he's fractured. He can't look people in the eye. He can't sit in silence. He can't enjoy life because he's always chasing life. Watts challenges that. He invites you to kill the illusion, to realize that your problems don't lie in the past, nor your salvation in the future. It's all happening right here, in this eternal now. Your power doesn't increase by doing more. It increases by being more. This isn't spiritual fluff. It's a tactical shift in how you move through the world. Imagine walking into a room not as a man worried about what others think, but as a man rooted in the now, calm, grounded, alert. That presence is magnetic. It's dangerous. It's rare, because very few men ever master it. Most are stuck in their heads, obsessing over what went wrong, or fearing what might go wrong. But the present moment is like a blade. If you learn how to use it, you cut through all that noise. You start seeing clearly. You start hearing what your soul has been trying to say for years. Alan Watts didn't offer steps. He offered awareness. He knew that no technique would save you if you were asleep in your own mind. He urged you to stop running, to stop postponing your life, to stop thinking you need to become someone else before you can be at peace. You are not a product. You are not a project. You are presence itself. And the sooner you see this, the sooner your strength returns. Not a fake strength built on validation and ego, but a deep, quiet power that no one can take from you. The question isn't whether you have time. The question is, can you face the moment you're already in? Part 2. The ego's illusion, the false self that fears the now. Alan Watts once said, "We suffer from a hallucination, from a false and distorted sense of our own existence." That hallucination has a name, the ego. It's the voice in your head that pretends to be you, the inner narrator that builds a story of who you are based on memory, comparison, and fear. And that voice, smooth, persuasive, anxious, cannot exist in the present moment. The ego is addicted to time. It needs the past to justify its pain, and the future to maintain its hope. It says, "You're not good enough yet, but maybe one day you will be." That lie is the prison most men are trapped in. Watts wasn't offering a path to improve the ego. He was trying to destroy the illusion completely. He challenged men to see that their so-called identity is nothing but a mental construct built from stories, traumas, expectations, and false ambitions. You think you're your job, your mistakes, your wins, your reputation. But all of that is just a costume, a collection of labels pasted onto a being that is far more vast and free than the ego can comprehend. The present moment is deadly to the ego. Why? Because it reveals that none of its stories are real. In the now, there is no narrative, no hero, no victim, no future billionaire, just breath, just sensation, just being. And the ego hates that silence. It would rather keep you anxious and busy, endlessly improving, endlessly fixing, than allow you to rest into the truth of what you already are. A man ruled by ego is always chasing status. He fears being forgotten. He seeks admiration. But a man who kills the ego becomes something else. He becomes quiet, clear, free. He doesn't need to be seen because he sees. He doesn't beg for validation because he knows. Alan Watts invited men to wake up, not through effort, but through awareness. He asked, "Can you observe the ego without identifying with it? Can you hear that voice in your head and recognize that it's not you?" That's the beginning of liberation. The moment you stop believing every thought, every fear, every ambition, a strange thing happens. You return to yourself, not the version you crafted to survive the world, but the one that existed before you were taught to be afraid. This return is not easy. The ego will resist. It will scream that you're falling behind, that you're being lazy, that if you don't obsess, everything will fall apart. But that's the trap. It wants you afraid, because fear feeds it. Watts once laughed at how seriously men take themselves. He said, "Trying to define yourself is like trying to bite your own teeth." That's the game of the ego, a never-ending loop of trying to become instead of simply being. So what's the alternative? Stillness, presence, surrender. Not as weakness, but as strength. The man who no longer clings to the ego becomes dangerous because he can no longer be manipulated. Not by society, not by women, not by status. He no longer performs. He lives. He no longer reacts. He responds. And in that shift, he becomes something rare. A man who is free. Part 3. The silent witness. Observing without controlling. In a world obsessed with action, control, and constant noise, Alan Watts offered something radically different. Silence. Not as passivity, but as power. He taught that there is strength not only in speaking, doing, and striving, but in watching, in simply being aware without interference. This is the art of becoming the silent witness. Most men are terrified of this. They fill their lives with noise, music, screens, stimulation, because silence reveals a truth they're not ready to face. They are not in control, and they never were. Watts understood this. He once said, "Muddy water is best cleared by leaving it alone." But the modern man, conditioned to fix everything, doesn't know how to leave things alone. He thinks he must always intervene, solve, dominate. In doing so, he loses the power of presence. He becomes a puppet of reaction, pulled by external strings he refuses to see. But there's another way, a higher path. To observe without trying to change, to listen without planning a reply, to look at life directly without adding meaning or judgment. That is the way of the silent witness. It is the doorway to true masculinity, rooted not in aggression or control, but in clarity and awareness. The man who becomes a witness begins to see through the madness. He watches his anger rise and doesn't act on it. He sees desire and doesn't obey it. He watches others lie, boast, collapse, beg, and he remains still. This isn't weakness, it's mastery. The silent man, the present man, is feared because nothing shakes him. He doesn't react like the herd. He doesn't seek approval. His power comes not from what he does, but from what he doesn't need to do. Watts taught that life is not a problem to be solved, but a reality to be experienced. The more you try to control it, the more it slips through your fingers. But when you watch it, truly watch it, it reveals itself to you. The universe opens not to the man who fights it, but to the one who listens. There's something deeply masculine about this kind of stillness. It's not apathy. It's not cowardice. It's presence with a sword in its sheath, ready but not reactive, gentle but unshakable. That is the silent witness, fully alive, fully aware, but no longer consumed by the need to control. And here's the truth most men will never hear. You don't need to change the world. You don't even need to change yourself. You need to see clearly, to watch without panic, to stand in the middle of the storm and breathe. Because when you stop trying to control everything, something else emerges. Trust. Not blind faith, not superstition, but a deep cellular knowing that life is not against you, that the same intelligence that moves the stars also beats your heart. And all it asks is this: pay attention, stay awake, stop interfering. The man who understands this becomes rare. He moves slower, speaks with weight, looks others in the eye without needing anything. He has faced the void within himself and discovered, not emptiness, but peace. Alan Watts wasn't trying to create followers. He was trying to wake up lions, men who could sit in silence and not flinch, men who could observe their minds and not be ruled by them, men who could finally stop running and just be. Part 4. Impermanence. Embracing the flow of life. Alan Watts believed that most human suffering comes from one simple mistake. We resist what is constantly changing. We try to freeze time, to hold on to people, pleasures, identities, as if anything in this world could ever remain the same. But everything is in motion. Everything is dissolving, and the man who cannot accept this becomes a slave to fear. Watts said, "The more a thing tends to be permanent, the more it tends to be lifeless." Yet we seek permanence in everything: relationships, status, beliefs. We crave control, but life is not a structure. It is a flow, a rhythm, a dance, and if you try to grip it too tightly, it slips right through your fingers. This truth breaks most men. They lose their minds when things fall apart, when a woman leaves, when money disappears, when their plans collapse. But that pain comes not from the event itself. It comes from their resistance to the event. The awakened man doesn't fight impermanence. He bows to it. He sees that the wave cannot be separated from the ocean, that death is part of life, that endings are not failures, they are transitions. Watts compared life to music. The point of music isn't to reach the final note. The point is to play, to feel each moment as it unfolds. But most men treat life like a race. They rush toward the next milestone, thinking happiness is somewhere ahead. And when they get there, it's already gone. The next thing is calling, the next goal, the next illusion. Impermanence is not the enemy. It is the proof that life is alive. You are never meant to be a fixed thing. You are a current, a movement, a breath. Trying to be solid in a fluid world is what makes you suffer. The man who embraces impermanence becomes free. He is no longer obsessed with preservation. He is focused on presence. He doesn't ask, "How do I keep this forever?" He asks, "How deeply can I experience it now?" This changes everything. You stop clinging to people so you can love them fully without ownership. You stop obsessing over outcomes so you can act with clarity, not fear. You stop trying to define yourself so you can become yourself moment by moment. Impermanence gives you back your power, not the kind that dominates, but the kind that adapts. The kind that flows like water, moves like wind, and remains grounded like earth. You no longer fear loss because you understand. Nothing real can ever be lost. It only transforms. Watts didn't want you to become detached from life. He wanted you to dive into it so fully that even its end would be met with a calm smile. He wanted you to see that death is not the opposite of life. It is the completion of it. And once you make peace with that, every breath becomes sacred. Most men live as if they have time. They postpone truth. They delay love. They bury passion. But the man who accepts impermanence stops waiting. He becomes urgent, alive, present. Not in panic, but in reverence. He understands that every moment is both a birth and a death, that this conversation, this glance, this sunrise, they will never happen again. And so he pays attention. He listens. He feels, fully. That is the gift of impermanence. It wakes you up. It burns away illusions. It humbles the ego. And in that humility, a new man is born. Not one who tries to control life, but one who moves with it. Part 5. The Power of Play. Seriousness is a disease of the ego. Alan Watts once said, "Man suffers only because he takes seriously what the gods made for fun." At first, this may sound like a joke, but behind the laughter is a blade of truth sharp enough to cut through the deepest suffering. Because the moment a man loses his sense of play, he loses his connection to life itself. Look around. The modern man is heavy. His face is tight. His body is tense. His mind is always at war. Everything is a task, a goal, a competition. He believes that unless he is struggling, he's not growing. That unless he's serious, he's not a real man. But Watts flips this idea on its head. He tells us that life is not a problem to solve. It's a game to play. And those who take the game too seriously forget that they are players, not prisoners. This doesn't mean life is meaningless. It means life is not mechanical. It's musical. It moves in waves, in laughter, in paradox. To be fully alive is to flow with this rhythm, not to resist it with a clenched jaw and furrowed brow. The man who learns to play becomes powerful in a way most men never understand. He no longer breaks under pressure because he's not fighting the pressure. He dances with it. He smiles in the storm. He walks into difficulty not as a victim but as an explorer. Playfulness for Watts is not childish, it's divine. It's the natural state of one who sees clearly. Because once you realize that life is always shifting, always temporary and never entirely in your control, what else can you do but smile and join the dance? The ego, however, hates play. It wants rules, structure, labels. It wants you to act your age, to be serious, to stay on track. But those rules are chains. They tighten around the soul until all spontaneity is strangled, until joy becomes foreign, until laughter feels like weakness. But the awakened man doesn't follow the ego's rules. He knows that seriousness is not strength. It's fear wearing a suit. He knows that laughter, movement, joy, these are not signs of immaturity. They are signs of freedom. Watts spoke often about the man who learns to live like water, strong because he flows, clear because he doesn't resist. That's play, not recklessness, not apathy, but the bold, masculine art of taking life lightly and still walking through fire when needed. To play is to trust that not everything must be known, controlled, or won, to trust that you can live without proving anything, that you can fail and laugh, that you can win and still stay humble. And there's something magnetic about a man like that. A man who isn't easily offended, who doesn't need to dominate every room, who knows when to be silent and when to make others smile. He carries a different energy, soft, yet dangerous, light, yet grounded. Playfulness does not mean you avoid pain. It means you move through it with grace. It means you don't turn pain into identity. You feel it, learn from it, and then you move on. Because life is always moving on, and those who cling, suffer. Those who flow, evolve. Watts wasn't mocking life when he called it a play. He was honoring it, reminding us that the deepest wisdom often wears the face of a fool. That joy is not a luxury. It's a sign that you are no longer pretending to be someone you're not. So loosen your grip, drop the act, laugh deeply, and remember, the man who plays well lives well, and the man who lives well leaves behind a silence that echoes with freedom. Part 6. Surrender, becoming one with the now. Alan Watts once said, to let go of yourself, to let go of the ego, is to become one with the universe. At the heart of his teachings lies a simple but terrifying truth. You must surrender. Not as defeat, but as awakening. Not as weakness, but as ultimate power. Most men misunderstand surrender. They think it means giving up, losing, quitting. But surrender isn't about collapsing. It's about releasing the illusion that you were ever in control. It's the end of resistance. The moment when you stop trying to dominate life and start participating in it. This is where the present moment finally reveals its true nature, not as something to be used or conquered, but as something to merge with. And when a man surrenders to the now, he doesn't become passive, he becomes real. He stops fighting the current. He stops needing explanations. He doesn't demand that life makes sense. He lives, fully, in the unknown, and trusts that being is enough. That silence is enough. That this moment, without achievement, without status, without validation, is already whole. This kind of surrender is terrifying to the ego. It thrives on doing, fixing, chasing. But the man who learns to be still, the man who learns to breathe deeply into what is, that man becomes indestructible, because now nothing needs to happen for him to be okay. He doesn't need to win to feel strong. He doesn't need to be admired to feel worthy. He doesn't even need to understand to feel peace. He is rooted, not in logic, not in success, but in being. Watts compared this surrender to falling backward into the arms of the universe. You don't know if it will catch you, but you fall anyway. And in that moment you discover, you were never falling. You were always held. This is what most men will never taste. They'll spend their lives tensing up, bracing, controlling every variable, planning every step, and still, they'll suffer. Because peace doesn't come from control, it comes from surrender. The man who surrenders is not neutral. He is powerful because he acts without resistance. He speaks from silence, moves with intuition, loves without fear, leaves when it's time, without hate, stays when it's right, without need. He no longer asks, "What should I be doing?" Instead he asks, "What is life inviting me into right now?" This is the sacred masculine, present, calm, aware, responsive, not chasing, not hiding, not proving. Just here, breathing, alive, whole. Alan Watts didn't offer a religion. He didn't give men rules. He gave them the space to let go, to stop pretending, to stop clinging, to stop trying to be some polished, perfected image of masculinity, and to start being what they already are, conscious life in motion. Surrender doesn't mean you become soft. It means your strength no longer comes from fear. It comes from truth. It comes from presence. It comes from knowing that nothing outside of you can complete you because you were never incomplete. Let that sink in. You don't need more. You don't need answers. You don't even need to change. You need to wake up to this breath, to this moment, to this life. And when you do, you'll see it was never about becoming someone else. It was always about returning to who you've always been. You've been told that power is noise, that strength is tension, that progress is constant motion. But Alan Watts whispered a different truth, one that only the brave can hear. Power is presence. Not tomorrow, not someday, but now. When you drop the need to become, you begin to see. When you stop chasing, life starts arriving. And when you finally let go, you return, not to some future version of yourself, but to the man you were always meant to be. Aware, alive, free. So pause. Feel your breath. Listen to the silence behind these words. That silence is not empty. It's full of you. The world doesn't need a more productive you. It needs a more present you. A man who sees. A man who feels. A man who has stopped running. Because the greatest strength is not in controlling time. It's in becoming one with it. Right now, right here. Welcome back.